This is a very special moment for the festival. It's a pleasure to begin the press conference for If These Walls Could Talk, which is having its screening at the festival this year as a special presentation. I will introduce the members of the panel, the people who have been able to join us today. I'll start at the far end of the table with the film's executive producer, Suzanne Todd. This is Suzanne's third production for her and Demi Moore's Universal-based moving pictures production company. With the awards, honors, critical acclaim, and extraordinary public popularity our next two guests have garnered, they hardly need a formal introduction. Demi Moore has starred in such films as Striptease, The Juror, The Scarlet Letter, Now and Then, Disclosure, A Few Good Men, Indecent Proposal, and Ghost. With If These Walls Could Talk, she's both executive producer and star. Cher's movies include Moonstruck, which earned her an Academy Award as Best Actress, Silkwood, The Witches of Eastwick, Mask, Mermaids, Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, and Suspect. Today we welcome her in her directorial debut as co-director and star of If These Walls Could Talk. And finally, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce Colin Callender, Senior Vice President of HBO NYC. This is Colin's third visit to the festival. He was here as producer for Forrest Whitaker's directorial debut, Strapped, and as well he produced Peter Greenaway's Belly of an Architect. A first question.
I wonder if the whole panel could discuss the issue of abortion from the very first time they heard the word, or had any thoughts about it, and then how it might have progressed and what their views are about the situation at this point.
Will, excuse me, I'm just going to jump in here because we've asked the photographers to stop shooting during the press conference. It's just too distractive and you're simply too numerous. Thank you.
Before we leave, we'll be happy to do a few more. It's hard to concentrate, and I think we really want to be able to answer as best as we can. So we'll try to give you some time at the end if that's okay.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Enjoy the tea. Can we start?
So the question is generally the issue of abortion.
Yeah, when you first remember hearing the word, and then maybe a carry-through of any attitudes you might have had, or feelings, emotional, or whatever, and then where you are now in the situation.
I can't recall the first time that I became aware of the notion of what that was, but I can say in my generation, I had a very different understanding of it growing up than I think people 20 years before me or 20 years before that, which is what the movie really focuses on. I grew up in a time when, from any time I knew anyone that was sexually active, it was legal and very available, and not at all the stigma that it had been in years past. And so I think, as I grew up and got older, that I learned about how it had been before, in the changing times, and that's really what we try and look at in the movie, is how things had changed over the years.
Same for me. I think just in general for my generation, because not only was it available, legal, more importantly, there was a support system for the education of protection and birth control, and you were encouraged to come in and be counseled, not just in a pro-abortion capacity, but in a preventative capacity. And for me, the negative aspects, as Suzanne was saying, really came as I became an adult, and the issue seemed to become a political one, and took it out of the realm of the personal and the intimate. And what we tried to do, as Suzanne and I nurtured this project for 4 years to just get it to be made, is try to continue to strive to communicate the importance of this maintaining the integrity of the personal issue, and the pain of that, and kind of take back what has become a very external aspect of it and put it back inside the human being.
I have one foot in the past and one foot in the 70s when it became legal. I mean, becoming a teenager, I was aware that there was a huge stigma and people didn't talk about it. I knew about it from my mother and hearing my mother's friends talk. And then I was married, when I was 16, so I didn't have to worry about it. And by the time I was divorced, it had already become a law. And I do think, like Demi says, what we're trying to do is something that makes a person's story something that's not just a word. It's about the people, the women having to go through the feelings, not just the word abortion. It's the women having to deal with all that word encompasses. And it's strange how when you look at these three women, the word is so small compared to with what they're having to actually go through and all the emotions that they're having to deal with. And the word is political and the feelings are definitely personal.
Mm-hmm.
I should say from an HBO standpoint that I grew up in England where this whole situation was quite different. But I remember very vividly seeing Room at the Top with Simone Signoret and Lawrence Harvey in the scene in which she gets an abortion, an illegal abortion. And it's a very powerful, very dramatic and very simple scene. And we at HBO tried to find ways of dealing with abortion in a way that addressed the complexities of the subject and the emotion of the subject without getting the politics in the way. And we had looked at lots of projects over the years that addressed the subject and had never found one that we really thought could do it justice. And when Suzanne and Demi brought us the project, we felt that I felt really this was the first time that we had the opportunity to go places with the human story of the women who had to go through these, the whole experience of this. We could tell this story in a way that we hadn't been able to find a way in the past, and we could bring to the screen the honesty and the immediacy of the experience in the way that I think Room at the Top did what must be now 35 years ago.
Bruce?
To pick up the threads of the same issue, I'm curious for Cher and Demi Moore to discuss the impact that they think that this kind of film can have on the issue, or whether it's more of a personal, exploration of an important subject. Because there's many arguments as to what impact any film or television production can have on public thinking, especially in a country like yours where this is an extremely volatile issue.
So, go back a little bit.
Is it a personal journey for you to explore the issue, or do you actually need and desire to have an impact on the public in relation to what is obviously a very volatile political issue?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Well, the first thing that I think of when you say that is, for me, the impact that you're talking about, that is kind of more what, in a way, feels like the symptom of, or the byproduct of. I think it's really more the first part, that it's a much more, personal communication. If anything, it's a hope to impact and access the human side. And I know we're repeating ourselves because we want to take it out of the political arena. We want to remind people that that it's not an outside issue that people can discuss and really come up with an answer to, because it's too individual. It's something that is really no one else's business but their own. And it's one of the reasons why we've tried very hard to make this not a piece about abortion. It is not specifically pro-choice. We tried to find, regardless of what our personal opinions are, to make this reflect both sides of the issue. And in that way, allow people to make their own decisions. And if it happens to affect things on a bigger level, that would be wonderful, but it's certainly not the goal.
Well, I also think, what it tries to do, and I think effectively so, is it keeps people from being statistics and allows them to be women. And my personal feeling is that it's so individual. How could you possibly legislate it? It's every woman's decision. Like it or not, my children are going to be with me, and they're going to be my children. My mother's 70. She still calls me and my sister the kids. My sister's 45, and I'm 50, your children are your children for your entire life. So a woman can't be told, this is such a mammoth responsibility. She can't be told by some guy in Washington what she's supposed to do with this responsibility. You know, it has to be individual. We can't be statistics. We've got to be allowed to be women. And, you know, and if we can't have, if we can't have the responsibility of deciding what we're going to do with these children, then how can we possibly have the responsibility of bringing them up?
Right.
You know what I mean? If we're not safe to have that responsibility, we have to be able to decide what we're going to do with children if we have the capability or the capacity to raise them. I mean, at some times, some women just can't for one reason or another. It's not anybody's business to say, yes, this is right, you can do this, no, this is wrong. It has to be the individual person's choice only.
And that's the one thing that, you know, because this takes place in the 50s, the 70s, and the present day, what that gave us is the ability to really depict that no matter whether it was legal, whether it was available, whether people were fighting over it, inside the woman, it didn't change. It's still painful, it's still difficult, and just because someone says they're pro-choice doesn't mean they just immediately say, you know, of course, that's what I'm going to do. It takes a lot of courage to have to make either decision, and that's what we're trying to communicate.
Yeah, pro-choice is not pro-abortion.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I'm a mother. I know the difficult choice. It's not an easy choice. It's not an easy choice ever.
Madame.
It's a very powerful film. When I was watching it, it was very difficult to watch some of those scenes. As a woman, it was very emotional to sit through it. Did you have to make, as executive producer and director, any compromises to have your vision? Is that your vision? Did you have to make any allowances in terms to get these scenes shot?
You go first.
Well, I must say the only thing that we thought about at all was how loud the suction machine was going to be. You know, that was a big deal for me, and I gave and they gave, but I mean, I was amazed at how much courage HBO had in presenting this, because there's you know, we don't pull any punches. You know, there's nothing pulled. So no, I mean, that was our biggest fight. That was our only, you know, fight, and we both compromised.
And I had mine too, but it was, and you know, in effect, we felt more concerned, or on our end, to pull back, because it's important to push that envelope, because that is part of, you know, the painful elements, the drama. You know, in mine, again, it was such a small point that we, you know, went back and forth over, having to do with the knitting needle and how much do you show. And, you know, like Cher said, I have to commend HBO up and down and, you know, backwards and forwards, because in the end, as much as they wanted to express the potential concern we would face in feedback, they were still willing to support what we believed was the right thing to do.
So it wasn't a matter of lots of obstacles to have to overcome. It was
No, thank God.
I also think, though, that it must, I mean, it took someone with Demi's power and fortitude to have something like this made, and vision of HBO, and, you know, the last thing I'm ever going to be accused of is kissing ass, but I have to put, you know, I have to congratulate people where I see it. I mean, without the power, Demi couldn't have done this, because these kind of issues, which are considered women's issues in women's films, are not on everybody's top 10 of things to do, you know? So, and I think I also think HBO's gotten something that's really worthwhile and very entertaining, but I still think they had an awful lot of guts to do this. And when I said the suction machine and laughed, I mean, it's not a funny, it's funny to say that, but for me it was really important that people understand that I wasn't trying to paint a pretty picture of abortion either. So that it wasn't one, you know, abortion is like, yes, let's go do that, and I'll meet you for lunch. It was something that's very, very difficult, and the sound of that machine was very upsetting to people as it should be.
Exactly.
And so, but there's a place where you are real, and then there's a place where HBO felt that it was, you would turn off more people who would be more upset about the level of the suction machine, and so you want to try to balance everything.
Exactly.
Madame.
Ms. Moore, there's been a lot of talk at the festival about actors turning to directing, but there are also many actors here like yourself who are turned to producing. I wonder if you could talk about your decision to get over to that end, and particularly to produce, and I gather more than produce, to really get behind and make this film happen.
Well, you know, there's there's an element, and particularly many more years ago than this project, but well, there was a lot of women coming out and saying, well, you know, there just isn't enough of this for us, and there isn't enough of that for us. And as I...
Someone's beeping?
So we get it? It's okay.
The eggs are done?
That I felt like a lot of problem talk was going on about what wasn't there. And it's true, as just an actor, you are somewhat reliant on waiting to just see what comes to you. And in a way, my nature was too hungry to sit back. I felt like I wanted to know more about what was going out there. And if there was a problem, I wanted to be a part of a solution in creating something that not only could satisfy my desires for different types of roles, but potentially create something for other women. And, you know, and for me, that's certainly one of the greatest rewards that, you know, I've seen so far. And when I don't like feeling dependent on anybody. and I think that there's a simple way out of that, is you just take the action to do something. And you know, and maybe one of these days I'll really have the courage and I could direct. For now, I happily sit in this seat and admire those who do have the courage.
Great, thank you.
Sharon, if I can follow up on that with a question to you. What was it about, was it this film, was it a career choice that made you want to direct at this point?
Well, I mean, it's such a cliche thing, you know, to want to direct, I think, but for actors. But I think that there's a sensibility that you feel, and maybe you'll be good at it, and maybe you'll suck. Who knows? It's like everything else you try. You're either going to be good or you're going to be a miserable failure at it, and you just try it and see what happens. But
that's that courage part I was talking about.
And if you're given something to do that you are really think, oh God, I'm so passionate about that, and I find that I have a really good way with actors because I really like them, I really respect them, and I'm really rooting for them. And this was something where I thought, first of all, it's not like everybody in the world was asking me to do this, but I wanted to do it. And when I got the chance, when I said to them, yeah, I would act in this, but I want to direct it, and then they, I'm sure after they got up off the floor, they went, oh God, we want her, but you know, this is a high price. It just happened to work out, it just happened to work out. But I think that if you have some sort of a idea of an overview, because it's harder than just acting, and you like actors and you're interested in what you're doing, it's not the most difficult thing in the world to direct talented people doing the thing that they do. So was that the answer to the question?
The other thing about is that, as Robert said, we've obviously given the chance to other actors to direct before. I mean, Forrest Whitaker was here with his film, Cher's here this year. Rock Dutton is going to direct his first film for us next year. I mean, I think the bigger issue is going back to the question the lady asked, and let me return the compliment to the ladies on the table, which is that the fact that they were willing to use their celebrity to address a subject as provocative as this in as honest a way as they did is a tribute to them. And the fact that in the first film you have a character played by a star of Demi's stature going through the torment that she goes through gives the power of that, gives the journey of that character that much more weight than it would have been had it been played by an actress who didn't have the same celebrity. So it's not just a question of it's not just a question of the material, it's a question of the marriage of the talent to the material. And the fact that Cher decided to come out on this project as her directorial debut, with material that was on the page very challenging to direct. I mean, this was not a little a sort of chamber piece. As a first film, if you look at the elements in the film, it goes from the intimate drama to the sort of large action. There's a lot of range in it directorially, and the fact that she was prepared to do that on the subject as provocative as this, I think, was very bold. So I want to return the compliment.
Well, I can say also just on the front of Cher directing, which of course we're incredibly excited to have gotten to do her first of what I think will be many directing projects. In the beginning, when we talked about trying to find female directors, we had spoken to a lot of different actresses because in truth a lot of actresses of stature wanted to cross over and get the opportunity to direct. And a lot of people that we showed the scripts to would read them and say, this is so wonderful, this is the most important project, I'm so happy you're making it, but it just seems a little too hard because it is a very challenging piece to take on as a first-time director. And there was none of that fear from Cher. And I can tell you absolutely from the first phone call when they said, do you know who should direct this? And I said, who? Cher. I said, Cher, like Cher. You mean Cher? She said, yeah, she wants to direct, she's thinking about it, she thinks it would be interesting. And, as producers, it was very exciting to us, the idea of, the possibility of working with Cher, but I can tell you absolutely that it wasn't at all the idea of trying to get Cher to act in the piece and giving her the directing as a sideline. She came in to meet the first time on the script and was so insightful and so intelligent and so prepared with what she wanted to do. And, really just so impressive that there was, absolutely no question about it. But
Who would have thought?
It certainly wasn't a case of trying to lure her into being in it, although we're very happy to have her in the movie.
It wasn't entrapment, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Or enticement either.
Yes, exactly.
Dennis.
We all know how incendiary the whole topic is around the world, but I think people in Western Europe sometimes look askance at just how incendiary it is in the United States. When it's not just a question of life and death of a child, but of the mother, of people around abortion clinics that get bombed. And, the fact that abortion can manipulate political discussion. When it becomes at an election time, yeah. I'm wondering if any of you have any insight on why that is the case. Why is the United States why is it so incendiary in the United States?
Well, I think one, and I've certainly been, I think I've kind of fallen prey to it with other things that I've stepped in to do. More and more, and I think I'm almost shocked to realize it. I don't know, I guess I was just raised in a more liberal thinking family, but we are really a very puritanically based society, and that's just the bottom line. That embodies something that is very difficult to overcome, which is fear and control. And that's so much about, at least what I see from a couple of other things that I have attempted to do. I mean, fear of the body, I don't know, it's just, I don't need to go into other things that I've done, but I can only just say that that the idea of any kind of exposure on any kind of sexual level is something that in America they want to shut down. And I don't find it anywhere else that I've ever been like I find it there. And
it's very specific here in America to women's issues. If you look at women and their position in society, now in the 90s, in terms of the workplace and how they organize their families and everything else, I think that, there is the possibility that women seem a little more powerful now than they have before, and, that affects people.
I also think that in America is very much a marriage of idealists and hypocrites, and we're so polarized in that where, we have the biggest belief in marriage but the highest divorce rate, and we're polarized in everything. So it seems to just be appropriate that we're having so much problem with this. I mean, I've known about abortion my entire life, and I didn't realize how little I knew until I started in this project. It's like, because you think you know about something, you don't bother to really know about it because it's just around you. You just think you understand it, and you do from kind of an organic position. But when I started looking at the documentaries and reading all this stuff, I didn't believe that people had time left over during their day to get involved in some of the things that they get involved in. You know, like, doesn't anybody have other things that they do with their life than besides, you know, than getting involved in going and killing people about, you know, about something that they shouldn't be involved in to begin with? But that's, you know, America's like the teenager of the world. We're the bad boys.
Yes, please, Meta.
The research that you went into for the film, and you just kind of answered that, but I was wondering specifically what, as producers and women, and directors and women and directors, what did you learn specifically from this, from a personal point of view that you didn't know before?
Sorry, they're changing the tape backs there. You need to speak up just a little bit louder, sorry.
It's nice for a change to be told to pipe up rather than down. What did you specifically learn personally from this film that maybe made you rearrange a little bit in your attitudes or your own personal feelings on the subject, or did it just confirm what you felt even stronger? Also, I'm willing to bet that you've had people coming out of the closets and just saying, oh, you're doing this project. Wow, well, boy, do I have a story for you. It either happened to me, my daughter, my sister, my friend. And one of the things about this particular subject that always drives me up the wall is that you don't hear so much about the men and their participation in the situation. And I kind of like the fact that the husband that there was a man involved in the film and that he cared in the situation. And I just wanted to know about the research and how you all went about getting anecdotes and stories, or was it just somebody sat down and said, I'm going to just write down a generic feel for what's really going on? Or is there some personal anecdote that...
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, the three stories evolved in different ways in terms of the writing of the scripts. I can tell you the one point that you made is very, very accurate. And in the thousands of people that, you know, we spoke with in the course of the years of developing this and then actually getting to make the movie, I actually am saddened in retrospect by how many stories I heard and how many times I would be on the phone with an agent or with an executive or with an actor, and time again, almost every single conversation, a woman would say to me, oh, you're doing a project, but that's so wonderful. You know, I had an abortion 17 years ago. I had an abortion 20 years ago. And every story, you know, obviously lay heavy on their hearts. And the idea that there is still such a stigma in these times, many, many, many women would say, you know, I did this X number of years ago and I've never talked about it. Mm-hmm. And I did this so many years ago and my family doesn't know, because there's still that idea that you know, it's a very, very difficult decision, and anyone who's been through it, it's not something anyone does lightly, and it's painful, you know, whichever decision you decide to make. And it actually was surprising to me in our supposedly modern times how many people still feel very ashamed about making a decision that they felt was the proper decision at the time.
The scariest part, I think in particular, had to do with really looking at, you know, prior to it becoming legal, because the list was so long and so fierce of the women who had lost their lives, women with such amazing potential. There was no stereotype. There was no one woman that fit, you know, the bill as to who this happened to. And why, for me, that information in particular was so important is because that's what they're asking us to potentially go back to. That's what they're saying is right. And as Cher was pointing out earlier, you know, that when you get in there and you face this individual decision, whose life is really more important? The one that's here, or the one that is being potentially asked to be brought in if it's not the right time? Who will be there? These people standing up and saying, you must have this, are they going to be there to walk you through it when you don't know how? Are they going to pay the bill when you can't afford it? What are they really prepared to do? And that's, I mean, the magnitude of shame and degradation and humiliation that these women faced before they had any other access available to them is really what's criminal. And the thing that it's people are kidding themselves to think that it will not continue. So let them go and make it illegal if that's really what they believe. And if people want to choose that way, what will happen is, though, it will be a very short amount of time before women are left with having to find these back alley options. You know, we use pieces based, by the way, on very real stories. My episode, the kitchen table situation, is from a book titled
Choices We Made.
Yes, Choices We Made, that is, you know, not at all created. And the only other thing that, you know, we tried to do is we tried to find ways of depicting each of the periods of time with women that were not stereotypes, you know. For me, one of the only memories I have is that the 50s always seemed to be about a young girl who then had to compromise her future. We didn't want to do that. In the 70s, when it's available, we wanted to put a woman who was in a more difficult situation because she already had children, which as a mother, I can tell you, I don't know how I can tell you that would be so much more difficult to face. And you know, I think of the pieces, and again, this is to commend Cher, the present day is the most complicated. The emotions are the most intense. And anyway, that's enough of that thought. Move on.
One of the things interesting about the production is how many women were involved behind the camera. We have some of the producers here, directors, but also reading the credits. Nancy Savoca was the scriptwriter. There was a DOP, the cinematographer, the other directors, the editor.
We actually have another one of our writers, Marlene King, in the audience here today somewhere. Yes. Somewhere in the world, she's here. Hi, Marlene.
Can you tell us a little bit about the production?
Good.
Suzanne, do you want to?
You mean in terms of the women's involvement?
There were women in every aspect of
Yes,
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, for us, and you know, we've done a number of productions now through our production company, Moving Pictures. You know, the problem in Hollywood as a producer is you go to hire a crew member, you want to look for a director of photography, whatever it is, and there are a great number of qualified people. But when you look at the resumes, generally, a man's resume will be 2 or 3 times as long as the woman's resume, which doesn't mean to say that she isn't as talented. It just means she hasn't been given as many opportunities. And although we have sometimes been accused of being reverse sexist, which we're not. We love men. We feel men serve really great purposes, both at work and at home. But we really have tried to make an effort to reach out and say, if it was a situation where we felt everyone was equally qualified or equally as interesting, to sort of put the hand out and say, let's make an effort to let the women have more credits and, you know, work on more jobs. And it's also, you know, we like the atmosphere on set. You have a bunch of women. It's a very nurturing atmosphere. It's very sort of low-key in a way, the way that women can get together and just sort of get along, and there isn't so much posturing sometimes as there is with more boys. But, you know, it's not a slam on men at all. We love men, and we like having men around, too.
And the balance is important. I don't know who was saying that earlier. He was saying about having a man in the film's perspective is that that's important for us, too. I mean, we didn't want to, it's not interesting to exclude the male perspective for us on any level. You know, to have them there actually only helped us to better understand it from another side. Yeah.
Did you ever see this project as in the feature film world, which would possibly garner more publicity, or did you always see it as something that would go to TV, which has potentially a wider audience reach?
Well, the thing you find is that this, if we would have taken this out and looked at it as a feature, the problem is that we would have had most of the doors shut, because, you know, in the feature world, they just aren't as willing to put up the kind of money for a subject matter that is essentially not just directly entertaining, and in a way they don't have that kind of courage, and it's no slight against the project. I think it's just, it's sometimes it's just dollars and cents, you know? And I think that the other aspect for us is that this is a very intimate story, and there is nothing more intimate than watching something in your own home. Sure. You know, and
you also can't really classify it as television because you know
Right.
what HBO does is so different and so special, and I think it's actually a positive sign for all of us that so many people tune in and watch entertainment that is more interesting and does try to be provocative and does try to reach out and touch people because they don't have the same financial constraints as
Right.
a feature film that has to go out and try
the
and be
limitations of
silly or
television.
ridiculous to
Yeah.
make money.
Like, I don't know if each HBO in Europe, when this film goes to other countries, does it a theatrical or does HBO have outlets in other countries for it to hit?
No, it will be played, it will be distributed in television around the world. I mean, the truth is that I don't believe there's a studio in the world that would have financed this film.
No way.
And you know, to sit on a dais with stars of this stature and to be able to say, hand on heart, that the real final sort of, you know, the creative conversations where there was any toing or froing were about two tiny moments. I mean, you know, if it was a major studio involved in the movie, conceptually the piece would never have got past the first door. And I think that's the important point. I mean, this is a project that deals with emotions and ideas, and that is not the realm at the moment, for better or for worse, of American cinema, and it is not the realm of mainstream television in America. And to that extent, this is a venue where the work can be judged on its merits alone, without worrying about, you know, how it opened and what its opening weekend grosses were, or what its overnight ratings were.
Also, this is a woman's movie with a capital W, and studios are not usually interested in making women's movies.
And, you know, and nor do any of us sit up here with the idea that we wanted to do this because we wanted to, you know, cash in and make some big bucks. You know, it was much more important that we find the right home that supported the importance of the ideas and that didn't limit us in how we portrayed that, just as we talked about earlier. And as Colin said, you can't do that when all of a sudden the money goes up. When the price tag goes up, sometimes the limitations are just impossible to avoid, and we couldn't afford to have any limitations.
Also, the very nature of the film, it could have never been shown on television. It would have been watered down to something that would have been unrecognizable.
Which almost happened until it found a nice new home at HBO.
Well, before HBO.
Please.
I would like to ask Demi Moore and Cher if you've had personal experiences with abortion, and if you have, if you could discuss them.
Can I just say that although I appreciate the question, I feel that ultimately it's really inappropriate and too personal, and that my concern, not that I have any fear one way or the other, is that it would cloud the issue. And I want to really make sure that we don't lose sight that this project is for something that we want everyone to watch, and we don't want doors closed because of one opinion or the other.
I just want to know from the three of you, it's so powerful and unbelievable.
Thank you.
Where did you get the guts to make this movie? Just go with it.
Do you know what it is? We looked at this and we said, how can we not? And we're talking about, this is a project that we, before we even got to the point where we even had anything that we could go to someone like Cher, that we went around and around in circles, hanging on, thinking, maybe this is the time, maybe this is the time, at least 4 years. I mean, and it was just something that I don't think that there is any way that you can logically or intellectually really answer, because it's just something you feel.
And for my part, I must be really stupid, because it never occurred to me that it would take guts to make the film. I mean, what they did was the guts getting it together, but it was such an interesting piece of material that I don't see it as taking guts. I just see it as another story that needs to be told, and that's what we are. I mean, as actresses and whatever, we reflect society, and that's part of society. So guts doesn't enter into it as far as I'm concerned.
I'm afraid that I'm sorry, sir, excuse me. I'm very sorry, our time is up. Thank you very much.
More pictures.
And ladies and gentlemen,